Man, AAA gaming is really having a week, or really a month, or a year, and turns out right now that Sony and Square Enix are the ones to talk about the most. So, my name's Tom, otherwise known as Titanium Legman, and welcome back to the channel. Hello everyone, if you enjoy what I do, including my coverage of gaming in general, but primarily turn-based strategy RPGs, guides, news, gameplay, etc., then a like on this video and a subscription to the channel would be very much appreciated. Thank you so much. So I know this isn't something that we typically go over here on the channel. It's certainly not like I've been covering every layoff, every studio closure, every bit of drama from every major publisher and studio here on the channel, but I figured today we should talk about Sony and Square Enix, seeing as how they're a little bit closer to home for those of us who are interested in the turn-based strategy gaming space, especially things related to Final Fantasy and the like. And yes, while Square Enix and Sony are not directly connected, these are two things that did feel appropriate, so I figured I would cover them together. First off, because it happened first, Square Enix. What's happening with Square Enix? They're finally going multi-platform, and this is big news. Square Enix has been publishing their major titles pretty exclusively on PlayStation for the last, God, what has it been, almost 10 years, if not more now? I mean, I remember Final Fantasy 13 came out on the Xbox 360. That's where I got it, and I never finished that game. And that's the last time I really remember them putting a major game out on something that wasn't a PlayStation console, at least in terms of a Final Fantasy title. But now, with their 2024 earnings report out, Square Enix has announced that they are changing that strategy. Their profit is down 69.7%, nice. And while they do state that this is in part due to MMO and mobile declines, there are also growing operating losses from high dev cost for their HD games. Things like Final Fantasy 16, Final Fantasy 7 Rebirth, and Foam Stars have not performed to the expectations that Square Enix had. And yes, they seem to say that about every game that they put out, but clearly there's an issue here with the earnings that they are looking for and what their games are actually bringing in due to the state of just economics of the world and the gaming market in general. And that's not to say that these games are flops, that they are bad. Final Fantasy 16, FF7 Rebirth, both largely acclaimed by everything that I have seen, and while stuff like Foam Stars might seem to be a little bit more out there, still not a poor project from everything that we've heard of. This comes on the back of the fact that Square Enix has been closing down any and all projects that are smaller in scope, things like their Harvestellas, their Diofield Chronicles, and the like, so they can focus on a smaller quantity and higher quality set of products. This also comes with the closure of their various creative business units, things like Creative Business Unit 3, led by the legendary Yoshi P himself, which, while that has just been rebranded and Yoshi P has been given a new title, the idea of the Creative Business Unit has been shuttered at Square Enix. Couple that with the fact that, yes, Square Enix is going multi-platform, publishing to Nintendo platforms, PlayStation, Xbox, and PC in a more equal way, seemingly, than they have in the past, and clearly we can see Square Enix is joining the modern era in acknowledgement that publishing on every platform that you can is going to be the best possible outcome for your earnings, especially in the short term. People have asked many times, how would Final Fantasy 16 and Final Fantasy 7 Rebirth have done if they were published even just on PC alongside PlayStation 5, something that we've seen with the likes of Helldivers 2, which has performed incredibly well, largely due to the massive player base on PC through Steam. Final Fantasy titles coming out probably would be performing better. I know myself and Jane were in a fairly small minority of people who got a PS5 pretty much exclusively so that we could play the new Final Fantasies. Most people aren't willing to do that anymore, especially when a growing number of gamers have highly invested in high-spec rigs in terms of their PC gaming capabilities. People don't want to shell out for a console when they can just continue to upgrade their PC. I totally understand that, and it seems like Square Enix is starting to understand that as well. Now, Will we see future Final Fantasy games coming out on the Switch 2 or whatever it winds up being called? Will we see it on PC, day and date releases with consoles? Who knows? We'll have to see, but it certainly feels like we're going in that direction. What this means for smaller releases like the Dragon Quest III remake or the potential Final Fantasy Tactics Reborn project, we have yet to see. However, an interesting quote from this earnings call includes the idea of the Square Enix Reboots and Awakens project, a 3-year plan for rebooting long-term growth for the company. And of course, this likely just means a financial reboot, a financial reawakening, but people online, myself included, who are huffing that copium, do see this as a potential signal for a refocusing on remakes, remasters, reborns, rebirths, etc. of various different titles. Could this be an indication that we're going to be seeing a renewed focus on projects like FFT Reborn, continuation of the Dragon Quest III remake, etc.? Hopefully. We'll have to see. But I imagine that those would have to be slam dunks for Square Enix when they are trying to narrow down on the ballooning development costs of various titles and be able to make some quick, easy cash off of the reintroduction of beloved franchises to the current gaming ecosystem, especially if they can do that day and date on all platforms. I know a lot of people would be very, very happy if they could re-experience Dragon Quest III or get a new Final Fantasy Tactics on their system of choice, especially on the Switch, which those titles will be perfect for on the go, or of course on PC, where so many people are playing their games nowadays. What exactly this is going to entail, we will have to see, but seeing as how there's been so much news out of Square Enix recently, and a lot of the games that I love to cover on this channel have their roots in those made by Square Enix, if not made directly by Square Enix themselves, I figured it was worth covering here. Now, for the second half of things in a much shorter segment, I did want to talk about the news coming out of Sony as well, where they have finally announced the replacement for company CEO Jim Ryan, who retired in March. Those two individuals will be Hideaki Nishino and Herman Hulst, both of whom will be starting in June. Mr. Nishino will be taking on the role of CEO of Sony Incorporated's Platform Business Group, and Herman Hulst will be appointed to the SIE Studio Business Group. Together, hopefully, these two are going to be able to steer Sony in a better direction than where it's been going recently. Of course, Sony has been caught up in a tumult of drama with Helldivers 2 and all of the issues surrounding the publishing of that game, especially its availability in countries where one cannot make a PlayStation account to be able to access it via PC, something that has clearly become a very large issue across the internet, and something which seems like it's going to be affecting future Sony publishing on PC as well, with things like Ghost of Tsushima now experiencing problems in that regard too, being delisted in, frankly, the vast majority of countries in which one would be able to expect to purchase it. So hopefully, with the appointment of these two new CEOs, things are going to be turned in a better direction, and maybe, just maybe, we'll be able to see some former Sony exclusives coming to other platforms sooner. Things like the upcoming Final Fantasy XVI PC release, we know that's happening, but maybe Final Fantasy VII Rebirth or Chapter 3 of the Final Fantasy VII Remake, perhaps coming to PC and other platforms sooner than we might have expected. Maybe even the holy grail of gaming, bringing Bloodborne out of the vault and giving that a much-needed remaster, if not a remake. Who knows? There is certainly a lot of potential on the table when you have a major shift in leadership like this from Sony. And again, seeing as how there's a fair bit of content that we cover here on the channel that's rooted in Sony as well as Square Enix, I figured it was worth mentioning here. It's a big shakeup. We'll have to keep our eyes on how that goes. And seeing as how Microsoft and Xbox seem to be shooting themselves in the foot over and over and over again out of some masochistic sense of self-mutilation, there's an opportunity here for Sony to really make a big push and become even more of a dominant force in the gaming space than they already are, at least prior to the Switch 2 coming out. With that said, though, that's pretty much everything that I wanted to talk about here today. If you enjoyed this video, let me know down in the comments, what are your thoughts for how this whole development with Square Enix and Sony is going to go? What are we looking at for the future of AAA gaming? And for some of the projects that I've mentioned here, what do you think is going to happen? Are we finally going to see a Final Fantasy Tactics Reborn? Could we see Bloodborne coming out of the vault? What about the Final Fantasy franchise and its future on other platforms? Let me know about all of that down in the comments below, and I do hope that you enjoyed. Until the next video, though, my name has been Tom, otherwise known as Titanium Legman. I hope you all have a good night. Stay safe and healthy out there. And remember, be good to each other. Bye now.